Alright, this video is reviewing sections 5.1 to 5.4. Getting ready for that test. We kind of split this chapter into two parts because it gets pretty long. So the first test will be on these sections. In this video, we'll review that information. First thing is you have to name or classify polynomials by their degree, which is their highest exponent, and then also by how many terms they have. Right, so I'm going to have you try that here. So you don't even have to necessarily write them down, but just see if you can remember what are the names for these different exponents. So highest exponent of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then if there's no no exponent at all, what name is that? So pause the video, give this a shot. All right, here are your answers. Hopefully you already tried these. So this one is called a constant, just a value that doesn't change. First power is called linear. Second power is a weird one. It's quadratic, which is weird because you think quad means 4, but squared is quadratic. 3 is a cubic. Fourth power is called a quartic, like a quarter. And fifth power is called a quintic. All right. And after that, they don't have any special names. If they had a sixth one, they just call it a sixth degree polynomial. All right. Now, by number of terms, again, I'd pause it, try this, and then watch the answers. All right, so if it's only got one part, that's called monomial. So these all end in like binomial, like nomial. They end in nomial, so this is monomial. Two terms is binomial. Three terms is trinomial. And then after that, there's no special word, so it's just going to be poly, meaning many. So polynomial for many terms, for anything that's 4 or more. Okay, next thing is to classify them and then state the end behavior. Particularly this on the test is usually actually trouble. But remember, you can always use graph on your calculator. That's one way to tell. Probably the easiest way to tell. Okay, I'm just pausing here. Hopefully you've tried them. All right, so before we classify, I'm going to clean this up. So distribute that, and that'd be negative 10x to the fourth plus 20x squared. So it would be a binomial because it's got two terms. And it'd be a quartic because it's a fourth power. Okay, and then the end behavior should actually be down and down. And again, you can graph that on your calculator, or I know this one's down and down because when the highest exponent is even, 4, and it's negative in front, it's down and down. So like negative x squared looks like this, and then x to the fourth, negative x to the fourth is still down and down. It's just a little more squiggly. So the end behavior there, down and down. All right, second example here is a trinomial, 3 parts, and quartic again, because it's a fourth power. And the end behavior would actually be down and down, because the same reason as the previous one. It's negative and fourth power. So just because I didn't do it in either of these questions, and I probably should, if it's positive and odd, so if I do a third degree as an example, the positive one is down and up for end behavior, and negative, like negative x to the fifth or negative x to the cube. So a negative odd one is the reverse. So it's up on this side and down on that side. All right, so that end behavior will be asked, multiple choice question on the test. Okay, so the next part that's kind of important to understand is understanding solution between standard form. So standard form for a polynomial looks like this, with the highest exponent first. And then we have factored form. So for this one, would factor to x plus 3 and x plus 4. They multiply to the 12 and add up to positive 7. And then you have your solutions, right? And so if you set these to 0, you get solutions of negative 3 and negative 4. All right, and then graphically, those solutions are where it crosses. So I don't have a lot of space here, but I'll try and draw a crude graph. This one would cross at -3 and -4. Right, so it would be this parabola shape that crosses. Sorry, I missed the 2 spots there, but it would cross at -3 and -4. So I'll try and draw that a little bit more clearly. All right, so the next section in here was to understand all of those connections, right, between all those different parts or worlds of a polynomial. Okay, so on this one, we sort of have factored form, and we have to find the solutions. All right, and so the only thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to write this out as x plus 1 times x plus 1. That's what that little square means. Okay, so my zeros then will be, if I set these to 0 and solve each one individually, we'll have -1, and then we'll have another -1, and then an x of 8. So you end up with 3 answers. And this one is called, remember that fancy word is called a multiplicity. So we'd say that the answer -1 has a multiplicity of 2. All right, next one on here, number 6, has us go from standard form down to solutions, right? So to get there, I'm going to factor, right? And so on this one, I'm going to pull out an x squared, a GCF. All right, so when you factor, always pull out a GCF first. All right, and so x squared is x times x. And then this other part, this trinomial, we can factor. It doesn't always factor, but we can try putting x and x here, and then multiply to 12 and add up to +1. So I believe +4 and -3. Okay, so that would be the factored form. And then set them to 0 to find our solutions. So each time you have a times x, that leads to an answer of 0. So that would have a multiplicity of 2 because there's 2 zeros there. And then if you set that one to 0, we'd have -4. That has a multiplicity of just 1. And set the final one to 0, and we get 3. So this x to the 4th had those 4 answers. And 1 has a multiplicity, right? 0 has multiplicity of 2. -4 multiplicity of 1, and 3 multiplicity of 1, because it's just 1, 3 as our answer. Let's see. Okay, so I want to do 7 here quick, which is actually this one you have to take the answers and go back to standard form, right? So it's kind of like going in reverse. So we have, sorry, I'm the wrong question. We have these zeros are answers, so find the little factors and go from there. Okay, so going backwards, right? If you have -1 as an answer, right? We can even do this. If x equals -1, if you add 1 to both sides, we get an x plus 1 equals 0. So we must have had an x plus 1 equals 0 factor, right? And so it ends up really being the reverse. So if you have a +1, you have an x minus 1 factor, and if you have a +2, you must have an x minus 2 factor. Okay, and so that's factored form for our polynomial, and then to get standard form, you just got to multiply all these together, right? So if we do them one at a time, sorry, not one at a time, but one pair at a time, I can multiply these first two, and I'm just going to FOIL, -1x, +1x, -1, and then, ooh, this is exciting. These will cancel out. Ooh, that's handy. All right, so now we're left with just x squared minus 1. Okay, and now bring down the other term here, the x minus 2. Okay, and then FOIL one more time. So let's see, x squared times x would be x cubed. X squared times -2. -1 times x. -1 times 2. Okay, and I think I messed this up. This should have been -2x squared. Yeah. All right, and then we don't have any like terms. So that is our polynomial that has those answers. So it's kind of a work backwards question. All right, min and max. just to review that, the relative min and max, so this is your relative max here, because it's bigger than all the points around it, and here's your relative min. So this is relative max. Okay, and so on this, we just have to read our graph. The graph is provided for us, so it would be x of about negative 1.1 and y of about, it's a little weird, these must be going up by 2.5s. That's 10 and there's 4 gaps. So this would be a little bit more than 7.5, so we're going to call it 8. All right, and then the one down here is pretty close to 1, so we'll call it 0.9. And then again, these are going up by 2.5, so this would be about negative 6, roughly. So about 1 and negative 6 is pretty close for that one. Okay, so then the stuff we haven't covered yet in this video then would be factoring and then solving using factoring. Okay, and so I put this for you here to try and think through when you're doing factoring, you should always do what first, check for what. All right, and the answer to this is GCF. So make sure you always check for a greatest common factor on the factor and solve questions. All right, so find all solutions using factoring, and it's going to be different, right? So here's all the different factoring things that could come up on this test. So we're going to watch for them on these questions. All right, hopefully you had a chance to try it. So this one does have a GCF of 5x. So I'm going to bring that to the front. So pull out a 5x, x squared minus 3x minus 10. Okay, and now I'm going to try to factor the rest of this. It might not factor, but we can give it a shot at least. If it didn't, we could use our quad formula, but I think this one factors to minus 5 and plus 2. Multiply to negative 10, add to negative 3. All right, so now we can get our 3 answers by setting each part to 0. Now that we've broken it apart, so this first one divide by 5 and you just get 0 as an answer. Add 5 and then minus 2. All right, so solving this x cubed, we got 3 answers. All right, a couple other factoring ones, solve with factoring. Again, pause the video, give it a shot before continuing. All right, this first one is our case where it looks a lot like the trinomial case when it's x squared like minus 22x plus 96. And we figure out what multiplies to 96 and adds up to negative 22, right? So we're going to do that same thing here, that same pattern. We're going to make two little binomials. The difference is instead of w and w, we're going to have w squared and w squared because this is a fourth power. Okay, and then we're still going to take 96 and figure out two numbers, they must both be negative, that multiply to that positive 96 and add up to negative 22. So I would make a big list, right? But to save a little time here, I think I'm going to do 6 and 16. I think that works. Yeah, I think that'll work. So this is going to be negative 6 and negative 16. Okay, and now that we got it here, these should be able to be solved pretty easily with algebra steps. So I'm going to set them to 0, right? And add 6 here. Take the square root. Add 16. Take the square root. Okay. And so I'm intentionally doing something wrong here. So I want to see if you can figure out what's wrong. All right, and so the deal is you need 4 answers. Okay, so what happens is this should be plus or minus 6, and this should be plus or minus 16, right? Because when you take the square root of both sides, you get 2 answers. And this one doesn't clean up at all. But the other one we can write as plus or minus 4 because square root of 16 comes out exactly as 4. All right, so now we have 4 answers to our x to the 4th. I'm not going to do this last one here because I'm running out of time on my video, so I'll make a second video that I'll start on question 11 here. All right, thanks for watching.